1. The Black Aggie of Baltimore, the backstory. In the Druid Ridge Cemetery in Poughkeepsie, New York, stood a statue known as Black Aggie. It was a stolen, unauthorized copy of a famous statue in Washington, D.C., and placed on the grave of General Felix Agnes. The statue, a solemn, hooded figure, quickly became the center of local legends. The encounter. University students and teenagers would dare each other to spend the night sitting on the statue's lap. The legends claimed that Aggie's eyes would glow red, that the statue would come to life, and that no living thing could grow in its shadow. But one reported incident stands out. A group of fraternity brothers initiated a new member by leaving him handcuffed to the statue overnight. When they returned at dawn, they found the young man in a state of sheer, babbling terror. His hair, it was said, had turned completely white. He was incoherent, speaking of being choked by the stone figure and watching the shadows around him move and take shape. He was reportedly institutionalized for a time, never fully recovering from the trauma of that night. The public outcry and the sheer volume of vandalism and trespassing due to the legends eventually led to the statue's removal from the cemetery. 2. The ghosts of the RMS Queen Mary. The backstory. The RMS Queen Mary, now a permanently docked hotel in Long Beach, California, is considered one of the most haunted places in America. Having served as a troopship in World War II, it has a long history of death, including a tragic accident where a sailor was crushed to death by a closing watertight door in the engine room. The encounter. A professional photographer was hired to take stock images of the ship for a new brochure. He was working alone in the former engine room, late at night after the last tours had ended. He set up his tripod in a long, narrow corridor of gleaming metal, known to be the very place where the sailor was killed. As he looked through his viewfinder to frame a shot, he saw a figure materialize at the far end of the passage, a man in dark blue, old-fashioned naval coveralls. The figure was semi-transparent and began walking towards him. The photographer, frozen in fear, heard the distinct, heavy sound of wet footsteps sloshing on the dry metal floor. As the apparition drew closer, he could see water dripping from its clothing. The ghostly figure walked straight through the tripod and the photographer, leaving him with an overwhelming sensation of cold and despair. He packed his equipment and fled, and the photos from that night's shoot came back completely blank. 3. The woman in the window. The Myrtles Plantation, the backstory. The Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, boasts a reputation for housing at least 12 ghosts. One of the most frequently seen is a young slave girl named Chloe, who had her ear cut off as punishment for eavesdropping. According to legend, she later poisoned a birthday cake, killing 2 of the plantation owner's daughters, and was then hanged by other slaves. The encounter. A family on a public tour of the plantation was listening to the guide tell the story of Chloe on the main porch. Their young daughter, about 7 years old, was looking up at the second-floor windows. She tugged on her father's shirt and pointed, saying, "Daddy, who is that sad lady in the window?" The father and several other tourists looked up. In a second-story window, clear as day, they saw the face of a young black woman with a tignon, a traditional head wrap, peering out, a forlorn expression on her face. The tour guide, who had seen this phenomenon before, calmly stated, "That's Chloe." They watched the apparition for a full 10 seconds before it slowly faded from view. The incident was documented in the plantation's guest logbook, signed by the father who vouched for the story. 4. The entity of the Sallie House, the backstory. In the 1990s, a young couple, Tony and Deborah Pickman, moved into a small house in Atchison, Kansas, a town known for its high level of paranormal activity. They soon began experiencing aggressive poltergeist phenomena, objects moving, foul odors, and their infant son being mysteriously scratched. The encounter. The activity escalated to a terrifying degree. Tony, who was initially a skeptic, began to experience physical attacks. He would wake up with deep, bleeding scratches on his back. One night, as he was lying in bed, he felt an immense, invisible weight press down on his chest, making it impossible to breathe. He felt hands around his throat, choking him. As he struggled, Deborah woke up and saw the depression on the mattress and heard her husband's gurgling breaths. She began to pray loudly, and the pressure suddenly released. The couple called in paranormal investigators, and during one investigation, a voice was captured on a tape recorder saying, "Fire, Tony." Shortly after, a small, unexplained fire broke out in the nursery. The family eventually fled the house, leaving all their belongings behind. 5. The Gray Man of HMP Shepton Mallet. The backstory. HMP Shepton Mallet in England was the country's oldest prison, operating for over 400 years before closing in 2013. It witnessed countless executions, diseases, and brutal murders within its walls. The Encounter. Before it closed, a senior prison officer with over 20 years of service was doing a final lockup check on C Wing, the oldest part of the prison. The cells were empty, and the wing was silent. As he walked down the stone corridor, he saw a figure standing at the far end, near the stairwell. It was a man dressed in tattered, gray prison clothing from a bygone era. The officer assumed it was an inmate who had somehow been missed, and he called out, "You there!" "Stop!" The figure did not move. The officer started walking towards it, his keys jangling. As he got within 20 feet, the figure turned and glided through a solid, locked door that led to an old, disused exercise yard. The officer, shaken, radioed for backup. They unlocked the door and found the yard completely empty, with high, unscalable walls and no other exits. He later identified the figure from old prison records. It matched the description of a prisoner who had been executed by hanging in that very wing in the 19th century, a man known for wearing a distinctive gray hand-sewn shirt.